Well, welcome back to all you regulars here on Mandolin Mornings. And if this is your first time here with us on Saturday, this is just a weekly hangout for mandolin players. We're gonna, chat about some mandolin stuff. We're gonna play some virtual tunes together, and let me know where you're coming from. What you've been playing. Any questions you have about the mandolin in the live chat, and we'll be just kind of going back and forth as we go along this morning. So. I hope you guys are doing well. It's been a good week here in South Carolina. Been catching up on some stuff and been playing a little bit here and there as well. I hope you guys have had some time to practice and to enjoy the mandolin. And just to start off, I thought I'd share a little bit. I've been reading this book I'm really crazy about. It's called Atomic Habits, and I've been talking with some students here and there about this one. So if you guys have heard this spiel already, forgive me for repeating myself. But those who don't know the book, you should definitely check it out. It's by a guy named James Clear, I believe. And the book is all about just kind of the human psychology behind building habits and building up little things over time that will help improve your future self or your future life, so to speak. And it's not specifically about mandolin, obviously, but it has a lot of really practical things for music in general, or for practice, or for developing a skill like playing the mandolin. So one thing that I've really taken away from this is this concept called the aggregate of marginal gains. And I know we're starting off this session with some heady terminology here, but that's just a fancy phrase that talks about the idea, if you can get just a little bit better at one thing consistently over time, it's going to add up to exponential dividends. And I've been thinking about this specifically for a few different aspects of my playing. So one thing we have been talking about on the site in the past month or two is writing your own solo for a tune. And that's something that maybe not a whole lot of people talk about. I wish they did, honestly, because when I was first starting out, I felt like it wasn't cool to write your own solo for a tune, or that was cheating or something like that, that all these great players were just able to come up with stuff off the cuff, and they never had to do that, where they sat down and wrote out a solo or came up with something and memorized it in advance. And I think that's total rubbish, because tons of players do that, and I've been realizing that the more I do it, the better I get at it. And it's always hard, because like when I sit down to write a solo for a tune, maybe you guys have experienced this, is I get this feeling like there's this inner critic inside that's saying, David, like, you're not good at this, what you're coming up here isn't good enough to go in a solo, or you're not a good mandolin player, or you're not a good solo composer or composer at all. And I have all these like kind of condemning thoughts that hold me back in the long run from actually doing this. When if I just say to myself, okay, like, David, the idea is not to write the perfect solo here. The idea is to get better at writing solos. And if I make myself, write tons of solos and get a little bit better at a solo every time I write it, there's going to be exponential dividends. Whereas if I don't write a solo, or if I listen to those voices and stop during the process, then the battle's kind of lost, right? So the idea is that quantity is always better than quality when you're first getting started on something, because if you can write 100 solos for a fiddle tune, or for 100 different fiddle tunes, and you get 1% better at writing solos throughout that entire process, every time you write a solo, you get 1% better, then you're going to get 100% better at writing solos over that process. So it's like, man, that's so exciting, right? I think that applies to so many different aspects of playing the mandolin too, and it's all about consistency. I think habit is really the big thing, or even like coming up with a system for how you're going to accomplish your goals, because we've talked a lot about setting goals on the channel and over on Patreon before, and all that's fine and good, but if you don't have a system or kind of like a habit built around the process to accomplish your long-term goal, then it may not work out for you in the end. And there's also this danger of, like, if you accomplish your long-term goals and you have no reason to keep working on your craft afterwards, you may end up stopping. It actually happened to me. I ended up getting really into running last year for some reason. I don't know why. It's like, running's awful, but it's great at the same time. And it's something that I was really excited about last year because I had this goal. I was like, I've never run a half marathon before. I'll try to run one around Thanksgiving. Do like our own little turkey trot with the family, and I worked up to a half marathon, which I was like really excited about, and I thought, oh, this is gonna be like a whole shift in my life. I'm gonna have like I'm gonna be a runner from now on or something like that. And I've realized that after I accomplished that goal of running a half marathon, I didn't have like a system around that habit or that lifestyle change that I wanted to make and it reinforced that lifestyle. So yeah, I ended up not running quite as much afterwards. I'm still actually kind of picking it back up. It's been a few weeks since I've run, just with traveling back to Northern Ireland as well. So I need to get back into it. And I want to kind of build a habit around it. So if I can get like just a little bit better at it every time I run, that's the goal, I think. Instead of just setting like a big off in the distance long-term goal that may or may not be attainable, or even if I do attain it, like what's the incentive to keep playing or to keep running or to keep doing whatever afterwards? So I guess all I'm saying is consistency is so important, like the aggregate marginal gains. And if you can enjoy playing mandolin every day, then you've already won the war, right? That's the main thing. Is if you keep playing mandolin every day, you're gonna get better. You're gonna get 1% better at these little things over time. And the rest is just kind of like troubleshooting, fine tuning, making sure you're being effective with your habits, being effective with your time on the instrument, all these things. So that's my little inspirational quote to you guys. Make it, see what you can do this week to make it a habit to practice your mandolin every day, even if it's just for a short period of time. I think that's a really important thing. So we'll leave it at that, but let's catch up with how you guys are doing over here. It's so good to hear from you all. Thank you guys again for tuning in here. We got some great conversation going from Connie. What's up, Connie? Hope things are well on Lookout Mountain. Yeah, the name of the book is Atomic Habits. Thanks for saying that, Adam. And James Clear is the author. Really recommend checking it out. I've heard about it for a long time. I just put off reading it. So I'm finally getting around to it, and it's been really rewarding so far. There's another book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, I believe. That's kind of a nice prerequisite to this book too. Atomic Habits might be a little bit more applicable to kind of personal situations, but The Power of Habit is a really interesting book just for thinking about habits in general. So let's see. Lewis is asking, how can you know the key of chords of a song? Hey, that's a really good question. Yeah. So maybe we could analyze that with a tune. How about we play a tune together if you guys are up for it? Let's skip straight ahead to tune time for today. And I thought we'd maybe catch up with an old tune that we haven't played in a while. Check this out here. So, Long Journey Home, right? You guys probably know this one, and it is such a common tune at the jam. So if you're at the jam and you don't know everyone else is playing this song in, what key they're playing it in, or what chords they're using, obviously if you have a chart like this, it makes it pretty easy. And just a prerequisite here, if you are working from a chart, there's a couple different ways to figure out what the key is that you're playing in. And I talk about this a bit in my videos, but just to reiterate, basically if you can see there's a chord that starts the song out and a chord that ends the song, and they're the same, like in this song we have A at the beginning and we have A at the bottom, and the chords are just written above the tablature and the standard notation there. So that's a good indicator that we're in the key of A major. If you see the same chord at the start and the end of a song, that's a red flag to be like, okay, we're probably in this key. Maybe not. I have to still keep my wits about me, so to speak, as I'm going through this tune to make sure it is in the key of A. But here's another great indicator that we're in the key of A. If you check out in the standard notation, it's really tiny on the screen here, but next to that curly Q treble clef, we have 3 sharps as our key signature. And if you guys know how to read music or you're familiar with key signatures, you'll know that's the key signature for A major. So eventually it is great to know like key signatures in case you are working with a chart like this and you don't have chords to reference, and the key signature is your only guide as to what key you're in, then that's really important to know. So there's tons of resources out there. I won't bore you with going through all these different key signatures, but that's the way you kind of figure it out looking from a chart. But you're probably asking more along the lines of, if you're at the jam, you don't have any charts or any written references for what the song is, how do you figure out what the key of a song is so that you can follow along in the moment? And that's a bit harder. And what I'd recommend doing is as a mandolin player, what you can do is look at other mandolin players' hands and see what chords they're playing as they're in the jam too. So like if you're familiar with the chop chords, kind of a good thing to do is just be keyed into what chop chord are the other mandolin players playing at that jam. So if like they're playing this chop chord right here with your middle finger on the 5th fret of the E string, that's kind of how I keep track of this one here. That's an A note, and this is an A major chop chord. So if they're starting the song off with this chop chord, chances are you're playing in the key of A major, and you can kind of go off that visual reference. But the thing is, like, maybe there isn't a mandolin player at the jam, right? Maybe there's only guitar players or only banjo players or things like this. You kind of have to get to know a little bit about every instrument in the bluegrass jam to be totally sure that you're playing in the right key, right? Because maybe the other mandolin players don't know what key it is either, and they're just kind of guessing what chord it is. So you gotta get a general consensus of what everyone's playing in to make sure that you're in the right key. So there's a handy thing with guitar players and banjo players, right? They use capos to kind of change what key they're in. And chances are, if they're playing in an open position without a capo, they're usually playing in one of 2 keys in a bluegrass jam. This isn't always true, but oftentimes they'll either be playing in the key of G or they'll be playing in the key of C. And what I'd recommend is just get familiar with what it looks like on a guitar to play a G chord. Like, even if you can't make it yourself, see if you can find what that shape is on the fretboard for the guitar so you can recognize it visually and say, okay, this guitar player is starting with the G chord without a capo, so we're playing in the key of G probably. And then, looking at, maybe they're playing a C shape instead to start with. Like, what does that C shape look like on the guitar? And then, okay, well, they're starting and ending with that chord, so that's probably the key of C. And then it gets a little bit more complicated as the capo goes on, but let's say you have a guitar player playing on the 2nd fret with their capo, and they're using a G shape. Well, you can kind of think, like, what is G 2 frets higher? Or, if you think about, like, your open G string here, what's the note that's 2 frets higher from that open G string? Oh, it's an A. Okay, right? So, G 2 frets higher with that capo is going to be A now, which is really confusing. So even though you're recognizing the G shape, you have to view it through the filter of the capo to be like, okay, now we're in the key of A since the capo is on the 2nd fret. And it just kind of goes up chromatically, right? Sometimes you'll also see guitar players playing with capo 3. If they're using a G shape there, it'd be B flat. And then sometimes capo 4 with the G shape would be B as well. And the same works for the C shape too. Like, if you're playing capo 2 with the C shape, what's 2 frets up from C? Okay, it's like C, C sharp, D. Okay, like, that's another common one. Guitar players playing in the key of C out of the capo 2 position, which is the key of D major. And then sometimes they might do like capo, what would it be? Capo 4 for E. But, those are by and large the most popular keys that you'll encounter in the bluegrass jam at all. So if you can get familiar with like those 6 or 7 capo positions, including the open position too, then you're going to be covered, because chances are there'll probably be guitar players at a jam, even if there aren't mandolin players. So that's a really broad overview of how you can do this. Another way, it's a little bit harder, but you can just figure this out by ear. And like, if you're playing along with a big jam and you don't know what the chord shapes are, you can just start playing chords against that, just really quietly to yourself. Be like, okay, let's say everyone else is playing in the key of A here. I can try out, okay, like, are we in the key of G? I'll play a G chord against that, and I realize, okay, whenever they come back to the root chord, that G chord doesn't sound like it fits. Like, what's another common one? Okay, maybe I'll try D next, maybe I'll try C next. And then when I finally kind of hunt and peck around until I find that A major chord and line up with the rest of the band at the start of a chorus or the start of a verse here, and I hear that kind of resonance, that it's almost like the pitches are starting to resonate at the same frequency, and it feels like it fits. That's my red light, or my big indicator to let me know, okay, like, I finally found the root chord of the key that we're in. And we won't get into it right now, but once you know the root chord of the key that you're in, that's like really the big step to figure out what the other chords in the song are as well. There's like this big fancy phrase that people talk about, the 1, 4, and the 5 chords, which I know it always gets confusing when you start introducing numbers into music. But the 1, 4, and the 5 chords are really the most common chords that you'll encounter, especially in bluegrass music, but in all of Western music, even classical music and other things as well. So, like the blues is based off of 1, 4, and 5, and a lot of jazz music as well. So all that to say, if you can memorize what the 1, the 4, and the 5 chords are for a few common keys, then you'll have kind of a starting place to guess, to make more informed guesses about what the chords would be after the root chord. So let's say you figure out we're in the key of A here for this Long Journey Home tune, and you don't know what the other chords are, but you know what the 1, the 4, and the 5 chords are just for any song in the key of A. You can kind of guess, right? Okay. Here's how you find the 1, 4, and 5 chords too. Well, I said we weren't going to get into it, but we will here just for this tune. The idea is to just count up the musical alphabet. So if A is your starting place, that's going to be our 1 chord. A is the root of the key of A major, so that's our 1. And then all we're doing is we're counting up the scale here, the musical alphabet. So A, B, C, D. D is our 4 chord, and then E is our 5 chord. That's the next letter up on the alphabet. Not even worry about the key signature or the actual scale here, since we don't have to really take that into consideration here for the key of A. And with that in mind, you can kind of just rule out a lot of other chords. You can say, okay, I'm just going to start guessing, when the next chord change comes around, it's probably either the 4 or the 5. It's probably either D or it's E. And they're all major chords here too. So you can think, okay, like when I play through this song, I hear this chord change come up here. I can, take an educated guess. It's either probably the D or the E chord if I don't know what it is. And basically I just try each one as the verse or the chorus goes around until I find the right one, and so on and so forth. So that's a little bit more complex, but it's kind of the way that a lot of people choose to do it. And eventually you hear the chord changes a little bit more clearly. You kind of get to know what the 4 chord sounds like in any key, or the 5 chord sounds like in any key, the relationship between the chords. All that starts to make a bit more sense. So really a lot of details there. I'm sorry we went a little bit crazy there, but Lewis, I hope that was helpful just to kind of get a head start on how to do this and how to feel more comfortable doing it. So Lewis is also saying, when playing Irish music and doing the comment, I'll look to guitar. Nice. Bouzouki. Yeah, bouzouki is tough because the weird tuning like you mentioned there. So I'd recommend doing the same thing for bluegrass in particular, and you'll find it a lot easier in bluegrass because there's actually kind of a consolidated approach. Like, most people play the same chords for every bluegrass song out there, with some exceptions. But I know in Irish music there can be a lot of different variations and a lot of different reharmonizations, and people play the tune different every time. So this will be a lot easier, coming from Irish to bluegrass. All right, well, I've been doing a lot of talking here. Why don't we just actually play this tune? And this is just a really standard vocal tune, but we'll play it instrumental. I won't make you listen to my singing here. But like we said, we're in the key of A here. We have the 1, 4, and the 5 chords. We have A, D, E, back to A. And those are 3 great chords to use. If you want to chop, you can use the chop chords here. We have like your A chop chord here, your D chop chord here, your E chop chord, and then back to A as well. And this is just a very basic melodic version of the tune. I'll be playing, probably some different variations on the melody. And we had, a lesson a couple months back on this tune where we went through 3 different versions and how you can add some different embellishments and some open strings, some slides, and all sorts of stuff like that to make it sound a bit more full, even though it's, still a really simple, straight-ahead melody. So check that lesson out if you're interested. It's on YouTube and over on Patreon too. And it's a really fun tune. It gets played really fast sometimes, but we won't play it too fast here. Maybe we could do something like this, where it's something like that. I'll count us in, and then we'll just trade back and forth. I'll play through the melody here first, and then when we get to the end of the form, I'll trade off. I'll play chords and let you take a solo, and just go back and forth a few times. So when you're ready, let's try this out. Let's do like a 1, 2, a 1, 2, ready, go. turn. Here we have this D chord coming up. Nice. So now we have A, then an E chord, then A. All right, I'm gonna take a solo here. Your turn again. All right, let's try this melody together. You ready? There we go. Nice work, folks. Little long journey home for y'all. And yeah, check out the lesson and the transcription for all three of the versions that I mentioned are over on Patreon. If you haven't checked it out already, there's a link in the description below here. But yeah, awesome. Let's catch up and see how you guys are doing. So, nice discussion on all this chord stuff. James is saying that Baron Collins Hill with Mando Lessons has an entire video on taking chord cues from guitar players. I didn't realize that. That's so cool. Yeah, what a great idea. I think that's a really valuable tool for any mandolin player, or even just like knowing how the capo works for the guitar, or for the banjo, or the dobro, and being able to kind of find those cues around visually in the jam to help you play better orally. Definitely check that out. I'll try to get a link to that later on. And Jay's is also saying, I guess the ultimate way is still to ask. Yeah, that's a good question too, or that's a good observation, I should say. Oftentimes we get a little bit, tied to our musical identity, and it feels very humbling to have to ask sometimes, like what the key is for a tune. But you're right, most musicians out there, especially in bluegrass and old time, are really dead on, super nice folk, and they'd be happy to tell you. That's a really great way, just to start on the same page as well, and adding to the music too, so you don't have to play weird chords over the chord progression when you're figuring it out for the first time. All right, well, let's see. Peter Griffin is saying a session on the circle of fifths might be appreciated by the group. That's so true. We haven't talked too much about the circle of fifths, but it is a really useful tool for a number of different reasons. It's kind of like if you guys haven't seen it, it's like a clock face basically, with 12 hatch marks around the circle, and every hatch mark is kind of symbolized by a key, and the relationships between the keys stay the same as you go around the circle, either to clockwise or counterclockwise. And the main reason that it's useful, I think, is to get between key to key. Like if you're practicing a tune, like what would be a good one here? Like maybe Long Journey Home. Like what jazz musicians might do is take a tune like a jazz head or something like that, and take the song through the entire circle of four, circle of fifths, where they're playing the same melody in 12 different keys. And I think that's a really useful thing to do, because you're seeing how melodies work in different harmonic territories, and it starts to be like you're not playing just like the key of G major, you're playing the key of A major or whatever. You're just playing music, and you're seeing how the relationships between the notes work no matter what key that you're in. So for instance, if you're playing Long Journey Home in the key of A, you could take that melody to the next key on the circle of fourths. I like to go to the circle of fourths, just kind of feels a little bit more natural. And then you could take this to the key of D major. Just finding the same notes in the same intervals, I should say, kind of in this new key. They're not the exact same pitches, but they have the same relationship within the key as they did in the key of A major. And taking it through from D to G, and then the key of C, F, and B flat, and so on and so forth. You can go all the way around the circle, and by the time you've played through all 12 different major keys out there, you'll arrive back at A major. That's the main thing I use the circle of fourths for. There's another big book that I kind of come back to from time to time. It's called Patterns for Jazz. It's written by a saxophone player named Jerry Coker, and it's just like a few hundred pages long, and every page has 4 or 5 melodic examples of things that you can transpose through all 12 keys if you want to. And they use the circle of fourths quite a lot as a way of trying out a melodic pattern in all harmonic territories. That way you're covering your bases no matter what key you encounter in the jam or what song you're working on. You'll know how all these melodic patterns work in every situation. So it could be something like this, where maybe you're playing along an arpeggio in the key of C, like something like that, and then you take that same idea to F. I need to work on that one. And then B flat, something like that. And once you've worked around the circle of fourths, tried all 12 keys, again, you've got all your bases covered, and you can play that over any major chord out there, no matter what key you're in. And there's tons of other applications for circle of fourths. Like I use that as a vehicle for practicing scales. Like you can play through your G major scale, then your C major scale, then your F, B flat, E flat. And it just kind of makes sense. The going from key to key sounds almost inevitable rather than just kind of haphazard. There's an equal relationship or equal distance between all those different keys that makes it sound like it's snowballing, or it's like it's got this forward momentum. Whereas if you just practice kind of random intervals of keys, like if you go from like G major to A major, it doesn't feel like it has quite the same fit, or it doesn't have the same kind of direction to the change between key to key. So that's what I do. I go around the circle of fourths just because it feels like really natural. And there are some other chordal implications. Like William is bringing up this great observation too, how if you look at the circle of fifths and circle of fourths, the idea of like these really common chord progressions like 2, 5, 1. That's one that a lot of people talk about in jazz and in swing music. The idea of going from like a 2 minor chord to a 5 major chord back to 1. Similar to the 1, 4, 5 chord discussion that we had earlier. This is just getting a lot more deep into chord theory, using some other chords as well. So like in the key of G, for instance, like your 2 chord is going to be an A minor, and then your 5 chord is going to be a D major, going back to the 1, G major. And if you look at the circle, that's inevitable. Like those are keys that are side by side that shows kind of this root movement of a fourth to get you back to where you need to be at that 1 chord. But we won't get too deep into that. I don't have the circle handy to pull up to see on screen because it does help to look at it visually. But thanks for that suggestion. I think we should dive a little bit deeper into this as we go forward. Maybe we could do another live session where we pull it up and check it out in more detail, or maybe do a lesson video on it at some point. So thanks for that suggestion. Let's see here. Well, how about we come back over to play another tune here? You guys be all right with that? Maybe we could do maybe something a little bit different here. I haven't done a lesson on this one just yet, but been working on it with some students here and there. I think we'll probably do a lesson on this one before too long, but maybe we could play through this tune. You guys might already know it, the Red-Haired Boy. Let's check it out. So this is like maybe the first fiddle tune that I learned. I think it was this one and Blackberry Blossom were like the first two that I really figured out and memorized and was starting to play with other people. And it's kind of a fun one. I think it does come from like Irish heritage. Maybe you guys know better than I, but there's this tune I played with an Irish band called the Beggar Man, and it had all these funny words to it. And we had a bandmate who would sing it and do like kind of a solo voice and Boron rendition of it. But it was the exact same melody as Red Haired Boy, which I thought was so interesting. I don't know what the link is between those. Maybe someone out there knows and can let us know in the comments here. Maybe we could try this one out if you guys are up for it. There's 4 different chords in this tune. We're kind of in the key of A major. Again, you can kind of look at the chart and see, okay, we have the key signature of A major. We're starting and ending with an A major chord, so we're probably in, A major. But the weird thing about this tune is that we have some accidentals in the melody. Like if you check out the top right corner of the page, the first line, the last measure of that line, we have a G natural, and that's like that weird symbol in the standard notation. We also have like a G major chord, just a G natural chord there, and that should be a red flag coming from our key signature, which has a G sharp. So we have to kind of keep that in mind. Whenever we see a G chord or we see that G natural symbol in the standard notation, that's where we're kind of getting outside the normal key of A major. Instead of playing a G sharp, we'll be playing a G natural. And the fancy term for this is we're kind of in the key of A mixolydian. It's one of those Greek modes that some people talk about. But the weird thing is that we're kind of switching back and forth between mixolydian and major, because we also have these E major chords, which has a G sharp in the chord. It's like if you think about it, the 3 notes you have in E major are E, G sharp, and B. So, if we played a G natural in there, it would change that chord from E major to E minor, which totally is a different sound that we don't have in this tune here. So, whenever you see the G major chord, those are the moments when you're in A mixolydian. But I'd say if you're not playing over that G major chord, we probably would want to think about it as regular old A major. So this is where it's weird. You're having to kind of think on your toes and shift almost like harmony centers depending on where you are in the tune. Even though we're still referencing A as kind of our starting and ending place, right? That's our root note for the whole key, even if it's mixolydian or if it's A major, it's still around A, but we're just changing that one note, G natural, whenever we come across a G natural chord. So there's just kind of 3 measures you have to watch out for, right? There's that last measure on the first line. There on the B section, the first measure of the B section, and then the last measure of the B section line 2. Those are really the 3 spots where we have to think in A mixolydian. And then for the rest of the tune, A major, I think, is our reference here. But let's check out these 4 chords. If you don't know them, A major, the open A is great. Open D is really nice. We have open G, and then the last one is E, right? You can kind of play that same E we use for Long Journey Home here. And the melody, it's a 2-part fiddle tune. You can read off the page here. This is one that's not available on Patreon just yet, but it will be soon. So feel free to play whatever version of the melody that you're working on. So let's check this out together. Maybe we could try this one not too fast, like maybe about there. Is that all right? I'll start us off with a little potatoes intro here. Here we go. So something like this. Here we go. G natural. To the B section. G natural. All right, your turn. So we have A chord, click D, A onto the G chord. And then a quick E chord back to A. All that repeats. section here we have G chord, D, A, back to G. This is actually the same as the last line of the A section here. Repeat the B section, G chord, D, A, G. All right, my turn. Your turn. Onto that B section here. To the G chord. All right, let's try playing that melody together if you can. Here we go. Nice work, red-haired boy. Yeah, be on the lookout for a lesson on this one in maybe the next few weeks if we can make it happen here. But nice playing, nice playing. Well, I see we've got a lot of ongoing conversation about this circle of fourths, so I'm glad this is a popular topic amongst you guys. You know, maybe I can pull this up here and we can try to look at it together. Give me 1 second here, because I see you guys are talking a lot about the difference between the circle of fourths and the circles of fifths, and I think that's kind of an interesting observation too. You know, it's similar but it's different, like you guys are saying. Let's see if I can pull this up here. Oh, did that do it? I think that might have done it here. Let's see. You guys see that okay? So the circle of fifths here on this weird pentagram-ish little circle here is going clockwise around the circle. So starting at C, you know, go from C down to G, D, A, E. And you can see kind of from the key signatures on the outside that we're increasing in sharps as you go from circle of fourths to fifths, you know, clockwise, I should say. And then, you know, as you come back around the other side of the circle, you make the switch kind of at the bottom to flats, and you go back to, you know, naturals, you know, losing one flat per key as you go around. And then the circle of fourths is the other way, you know, where you're starting at C and you're going counterclockwise. Now you're gaining flats one at a time as you go around the circle. Then you switch in the middle there to sharps, and you start losing sharps as you go around again. Yeah, you know, I think what is interesting about these two is that it shows this complicated thing about intervals, right? You think like, why is it circle of fifths one way? Why is it circle of fourths the other? And I think it just depends on what note you're starting with. And it actually kind of lays out really interesting on the mandolin here. Like for instance, if you start with a C note here and you go up to F, from C to F, that's going around the circle of fourths. You see we get this really nice interval of a fourth on the mandolin, right? That's a common shape that you'll see. Like even the bluegrass chop chord has the interval of a fourth as the lowest two notes on that chord shape. And it's a shape that works everywhere on the mandolin. Whenever you play this one particular shape, that's always an interval of a fourth. But let's say you started with the F and went up to a C. So same two notes, but now you're kind of flip-flopping the two, right? You're going from F up to C. Now you have a totally different shape on the fretboard, even though they're the exact same two notes. The only thing that's different is what's the lowest note out of the pair, right? So here was C on bottom, low C, high F. That's the fourth. But then if you flip those, we go low F, high C, and we have an interval of a fifth where you're having to bar down on the third fret of that D and the A string there. So interesting, right? I kind of blew my mind when I realized that like about 10 years ago. It's like, whoa, that's so strange that you can have the same two notes and it has a totally different sound, even though there's some similarities there, and totally different feel as well. That's kind of the big thing. It's like it looks and feels so different on the mandolin. And here's the thing, why I like to use the circle of fourths is kind of more from a pragmatic standpoint. And I think a lot of maybe jazz musicians do this as well, but it's actually easier to get from one key to the next using the interval of a fourth rather than the interval of a fifth. Like on the mandolin in particular, because I always hate kind of barring down my fingers to get two notes on the same fret on adjacent strings like that. It just feels kind of uncomfortable, and it's always like buzzing and muting. So going from like G to C, for instance, like if you're going on a scale, it's way easier to go from G to C, in my opinion, than it would be to like go to G to D. Although I guess like you're using your open D strings. That's a poor example. Like if you're going from like maybe A major, I should say, it's way easier to go from A to D than it is to go from A to E, if that makes sense. And that's a very, very minimal aspect of what's going on. Some people may not be bothered by that transition of a fifth, but that's one reason I like to go to the circle of fourths. But another reason is that there's this sense of continuity from one key to the next, like I was talking about. In fact, like the chord progressions, like the 2, 5, 1 chord progression, really only works on the circle of fourths, right? So if you think about it, like in the key of C, your 2 minor chord is going to be a D minor chord, which is just, 2 hatch marks along the circle of fourth here. It's that D minor. And then the G would be the 5, which is the next hatch on that circle before getting back to the 1 on that C. And when you practice like scales, for instance, going from D to G to C, it has like this kind of perpetuity, perpetuity, I guess is the right word, where it feels like one scale begets the next scale begets the next scale, and it feels like it keeps going on. Whereas if you go with the circle of fifths, it doesn't have that same relationship. Now, I can't speak to like the actual acoustics of why that is. I remember watching in school, there was this big series our instructors made us watch on, I think it was Leonard Bernstein speaking at what was it, like Harvard University or something like that, and he was giving all these lectures on the history of music and the history of how Western music came about. And he links this circle of fourths idea to the overtone series, where like where you hear one note like a G here, but you're really hearing like kind of other sympathetic pitches within that one note. You're kind of hearing these different intervals of octaves and fifths and fourths within there to create this series of notes that we're hearing in this one pitch. And how it's all linked to the circle of fourths here. I'll see if I can dig up a link and see what you guys think about that there. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on. And when you practice from one to the next around the circle of fourths, you get that kind of inevitability like I was talking about. It feels like you are going in a logical way from one key to the next here. So that's maybe just a little bit of a deep dive, but you know, hopefully it shows the difference between the circle of fifths and the circle of fourths. A lot of people talk about them the same way. I don't know why the circle of fifths for some reason became like the catchphrase for this. I usually just call it the circle of fourths, but it's the same thing, same circle, you just go different directions on the circle. And I like to do the circle of fourths for those two reasons, just because of the physicality of the instrument on the mandolin, and also just kind of this relationship between the keys and between the chords that you get on the circle of fourths that you don't get quite so much on the circle of fifths. So we should do another deeper dive into this, but that's just kind of like a little overview for you guys. This chart isn't available on Patreon just yet, but I'd be happy to get together with anyone for private lessons if you guys are interested in talking about this more. I've actually had quite a lot of folks sign up for private lessons recently, which is great. I've been accepting new students for the months of April and May, and it's been a lot of fun getting together with different folks. Shout out to all you students who are on today's stream. It's great to hang out with you guys again. So let's leave it at that for now. I hope that left you guys wanting a little bit more, so to speak. But lots of juicy stuff in the circle of fourths, circle of fifths. Yeah, well, let's catch up with how you guys are doing here. Perpetuation. Clifton is saying. Yeah, I'm not a English major. I should say I'm a mandolin major. Maybe that's why I'm so bad at words. So let's see here. Lots of folks talking about this. This is great. So Francois is clarifying something here that's really interesting. So a chord is 1-3-5, and so 1-5 works as a double stop. Yeah. So this is what I mentioned earlier. It gets confusing when you start introducing numbers into music, because some people use numbers as a way of talking about chords, like we talked about 1-4-5. And some people talk about numbers as intervals or scale degrees, right? Those are kind of two concepts that are related but not quite the same. But scale degrees, for instance, like if you're thinking of how to build a chord, like what notes are in that chord, you're totally right, Francois. You got 1, 3, 5 is kind of the formula that you use to find the notes on the scale. So if you're building like an A major chord, what you're doing is you're taking the first note on the scale, and then you're walking up to the third note, taking that note, C sharp, and then you're skipping the fourth, taking the fifth note, which is the E. So you're left with 1, 3, 5 to create the three notes that you have in this chord shape here. And I don't know if that it's not quite tied so much to the circle of fourths, circle of fifths when you're talking about scale degrees, but more I think when you're talking about chords and you're thinking about kind of the relationship between the chords, the 1-4-5 kind of approach, or the 2-5-1 that you hear people talk about for chord progressions. But the interesting thing is, like, those three notes in the chord that you mentioned, any combination of those three notes will work as a double stop. So that's kind of a cool thing, right? So you can play a C sharp and an E together. You can play E and an A together. You can play like an E and a C sharp together. You can play an A and a C sharp together, C sharp and an E together. Again, it just keeps going up octave by octave. But any of those intervals within those 1, 3, and 5 chords, or I should say scale degrees of the chord, then you've got like a pretty nice double stop that will work for that chord there. Hope that makes sense. It's a little bit confusing, right? There's so many different numbers going on. It's hard to keep it all straight. Let's see. And then so you have some people talking about the intervals of the strings on the mandolin. Yeah. So that's another interesting thing too, is that there's kind of like a little microcosm of what's going on in the circle of fourths, circle of fifths here on the mandolin. So, the strings are all tuned in perfect fifths, right? So G to D is the interval of a fifth. You can just even think about like counting up on your fingers, G, A, B, C, D. Same idea from D to A and A to E. But the weird thing is you can't really reverse those on the mandolin. Like, you're kind of stuck with fifths. It wouldn't be fourths because, you'd have to play a low E going to a higher A, which just isn't physically possible with the open strings. What you have to do is, maybe play like, you'd have to play a low E here and then your open A string there to get the fourth, or like a low A here going up to your open D string to get a fourth from the D to A. So it's all perfect fifths tuned up and down, which is kind of interesting. And it is beautiful, like how symmetrical the mandolin is. It makes it so easy to find your way around the fretboard, which is great. Will's banging his head on the table. I apologize. We opened up Pandora's box of music theory, and we can't contain it anymore. Hey, well, let's just take a little break from talking about music theory, and hopefully more on all this stuff soon. I've been thinking about, we've been mostly doing repertoire lessons on Patreon so far, but I know there's a lot of interest in talking about music theory and more techniques, so we'll have to do a little bit of a deeper dive in some videos coming up soon. So thanks for your patience there. But let's take a break here and let's check out like a couple things I'm excited to share with you guys. Come back over to Mandolin Weekly here. Oops, let's see if I can find the right page here. So a couple things that have been going on. So first up, we have a new EP. I haven't told you guys about this yet. We actually just announced it, that me and Tabitha are gonna be releasing a 6-track EP of some singles that we've been releasing over the past few months and some new tracks that we haven't previously released. And yeah, we just made the announcement today that it's coming out on May 10th, so just like a little bit over 2 weeks. And on that day, it'll be available, everywhere: Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, stuff like that. It's just a digital release, so it won't be a physical CD. But we're really excited for you guys to check this out. Some music that we've just been making over the past 10 months or so, and kind of a collection of things that we worked up over the lockdown, in particular being over in Northern Ireland and being back here in the States. So really excited about that. You can pre-order it over on Bandcamp if you're interested, or you can just wait till it comes out and buy it on Amazon or iTunes, or just stream it. Streaming is great, and you can find us like on Spotify and all that stuff. And I really appreciate like all the follows. That really makes a big difference. All the streams online go a long way too. So thanks for checking it out. We actually got this really cool album cover art that we're really stoked about. It's a lino cut press from a great mandolin player in the UK. His name's Nick Zupardi, and he's a fantastic artist. Does some really cool stuff over there, and a great mandolin player too. He was on Mandolin Mondays maybe a few months ago. So check out his stuff too. And then let's see here. Another thing I was excited to share with you guys, if I can find it here. We've got a new lesson out. I just posted it today, actually. We got a new lesson on Midnight on the Water, which is one of my favorite waltzes out there, actually. I don't know if you guys play this one, but it's like so beautiful. It's yeah, I don't know. It's like written by a guy named Red Luke, a fiddle player from Texas, and his son Benny Thomason was kind of famous for making it more popular in the 60s. And you guys have probably heard like Sharon Gilchrist and John Reichman play this one, or Jay Unger, Molly Mason, some other great recordings of this one. So check that out. I'm really stoked with how that lesson turned out. We're talking a lot about tremolo in the back half of the lesson too. So if you're interested in figuring out more about how to tremolo over a waltz like this, we do kind of a deep dive into measure tremolo and how I might approach a tune like this. So you can take or leave some stuff from there. So fun stuff there. And then also we got of course the backing tracks for this. Got a couple of different speeds for this one, and I got some melody recordings for like the single note melody version and also the tremolo version. So kind of two different versions for this tune here. And yeah, I think it'd be a great one to add to your repertoire. I think waltzes are really underrated, and they're actually super difficult to play when you're doing some measured tremolo on there. Trying to think about every single note that you're playing and making sure that it lines up with the music and the beat of the music, I should say. So that's definitely worthwhile checking out. And having like a few waltzes in your repertoire to call out a jam is such a nice change of pace too. I think that we kind of get in this mindset. It's like, oh, we have to play another fast one, or another fast one in 4/4, another reel, another long journey home kind of song. And yeah, we kind of just forget about those slow, beautiful songs that also take a lot of subtle skill, subtle kind of a lot of detail in there. So check that out as well. But yeah, we've been doing some other stuff. Like I did this duo with Trey Wellington. I don't know if you guys know Trey. He's a fantastic banjo player. He won like the Momentum Award from the IBMA a couple years ago. He's I think he's getting ready to graduate from, or maybe he's already graduated from ETSU. I forget, but he's studying banjo over there, and that's like such an amazing musician. So it was fun to get to team up with him for this Bela Fleck tune. It's a tune off of his record Drive, Bela Fleck's record Drive, which is probably one of the best instrumental bluegrass records of all time, I should say. It's kind of like the watershed record for a lot of new acoustic musicians who do this kind of stuff. One of my favorites. So we just worked up a duo version. You can hear Trey's banjo playing on there. He's fantastic, so impressive. And I was trying to keep up with him here. Trey's also got this really cool banjo tune weekly series where he features different banjo players on his YouTube channel, kind of similar to Mandolin Monday. So it was fun to get to team up with someone else who's also creating content for instrument specific stuff like this. So thanks for checking it out. And yeah, so that's kind of pretty much all that's been going on. There's not a whole lot of other news, but be sure to check out the EP. We'll be posting about it on social media. I'll be doing a share. Might even do like a little bit of a discount code for all the patrons over on Patreon if you're interested in getting the actual MP3s or the WAV files for the EP. But just streaming it and following us on all those online platforms goes a long way. And thanks to all the patrons who have been supporting all this content that we've been sharing. You can check out that Midnight on the Water lesson as soon as we're done here, and more lessons coming soon for sure. But that's about it for Mandolin Weekly for now. Well, let's see here. What do we got? Some fans of Benny Thomason. Nice, Ron. Yeah. There's a recording from his. I need to update on the YouTube page. I need to share this recording because it's so nice. He plays it beautifully. And let's see here. We got some. Let's see. Some different comments from. Let's see. Connie saying she learned this on fiddle. It was cross tune. Nice. Yeah, that's really cool. I've heard John Hartford play this one. I should say that's another really good reference for this tune. And I think he might do it cross tuned as well. I've never, attempted that on the mandolin, but there are some like cool possibilities with cross tuning. I've actually been teaching another student how to play some Bill Monroe tunes where he does some weird split string tuning, I should say. And it's such a unique sound. I should learn more about that. Honestly, I get more into it. It'd be fun to like write some tunes. Let's see. Francois is asking if I've ever played with Bela Fleck, and I don't think I ever have played officially with him. I've like crossed paths once or twice. There was this weird thing that happened in college when he came to the local symphony to play his I think his first banjo concerto. It's like this huge classical music piece that he wrote for symphony and banjo. And there's a strange thing happened where me and some friends were just playing some background music at a meet and greet for some of the donors of the symphony behind stage, and right before the performance started, and then the director of the symphony got a call saying that some of the principal orchestra members were stuck in traffic and they weren't going to be able to make it for the first part of the performance, so they needed to stall. And the director just walked over to us and said, "Okay, you're going on stage right now." And none of us had ever met Bela Fleck, but we loved his music so much, and it was like we didn't even have time to get nervous about it because they just threw us out there and we played like a few songs. And ever since then, I just said, we've opened for Bela Fleck. That's been my experience with him. But no, I've gotten to meet him a few times since, and I've gotten to play for him actually, which is great. Went to this acoustic music seminar, which is a program for young musicians who are playing this style of music. They have it down at the Savannah Music Festival, and did a workshop with Bela where I got to share one of my original tunes with him, and he gave some feedback. He and Abby were both there, which was really awesome. They seem like really lovely people. Yeah, we've just gotten to interact with him slightly with the band Mile 12. BB is actually pretty close with Bela, and gets to hang out with him from time to time. And we just benefited through his input and through his just interest in the band too. We played a set in Virginia where he was just sitting backstage and watching us play, which was pretty unnerving, but also pretty awesome. So yeah, I haven't gotten to play with him yet, but that's on the bucket list for sure. One of my favorite musicians of all time. But yeah, so let's see here. Why don't we finish up today's stream with another tune, if that's all right? Let's come over to tune time again and see what we got. All right, close your eyes. No PTSD from all this theory talk of the circle of fifths here. Why don't we come over to another tune here? Let's see, something that we can all play together. How about we check out this Cold Frosty Morning tune? I know we've been playing this one quite a lot, but it's one of my favorites, and I hope you guys have been enjoying that lesson that we did on this one a few months ago too. This is a transcription that's available on Patreon if anyone wants to grab it, and it's a fun 2-part fiddle tune. It's kind of like an A minor, A modal kind of sound. We'll not think about it too much. Let's just have fun playing this one here. let's see. Maybe we could try this one just a little bit faster to really bring it home, burn down the house, so to speak. How about we do something like this? Before we do it, I'll review the chords again. This is A minor. You know, maybe playing like an A minor chord like this is kind of nice. 2 2 3 open, or 2 2 2. Sorry, 2 2 3 5 is another version. Or you can play your open G chord if you want to for the next chord, and A major on the second part. You can play like 2 2 4 open or 2 2 4 5, either way. And then for the last line, we have this kind of quick progression where you can do A minor, C, D, E, and then you have A minor, G, A minor at the end there. So kind of a quick progression. We'll just have a stab at it, see what it feels like to play through this, and maybe we can do something like this, like a. Here we go. Your turn. To this G chord. A minor, G, A minor. Now we have the A major at the beginning of this B section. To G. Quick, here we go. A minor, C, D, E, A minor, G, A minor. A major, G, A minor, C, D, E, A minor, G. Alright, my turn. Your turn. Here we go. A minor to G, A minor. To the A major on this B section here, to the G. A major to the G. There we go. A minor, C, D, E. Let's try this melody together now. Nice work, folks. Cold, frosty morning. It's great to play with you all this morning. Thank you guys for playing, for following along, and yeah, hopefully before too long we'll get to play these tunes in person. I can see it happening. Well, anyways, I really do appreciate you guys tuning in every Saturday morning. If this is your first time, be sure to tune in next week, same time. We've been keeping this going pretty much every week for the whole year, even before then. So number 19 today, and we'll see how far this goes. We're looking forward just to kind of building a community around here too. So I really appreciate you guys just coming so regularly. All of you guys who are regulars here, I really appreciate it. And thanks again to all the folks over on Patreon who support this and make it possible too. You guys are fantastic. So I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed the lesson on Midnight on the Water. Be sure to check that out. And yeah, be sure to subscribe on the channel if you're not subscribed already, because we're posting stuff regularly every week, sometimes twice or 3 times a week even, and always doing these live streams, and join on Patreon for more stuff as well. You guys can find the Mandolin Monday merch store down in the description below too, if anyone's interested in getting a Mandolin Mondays shirt or a coffee mug or something like that. But thanks so much just for watching, because that's support enough, and really appreciate all the viewership, all of this the patronage over on Patreon, and yeah, we're looking forward to more ahead. So in the meantime, happy picking, keep up the good work, and I'll look forward to seeing you guys next week.